This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Beginning today's show is K-State Extension agronomist Logan Simon and K-State Extension entomologist Anthony Zukoff as they discuss BT cotton, bollworms, and stink bugs. A conversation about a farm-to-plate program from the Kansas Department of Education with Barb Depew continues the show as she explains how the program works for students and producers. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk ends the show, providing an update on HPAI in Kansas. We are currently at stage 4, meaning no herds have tested positive for bird flu. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our show discussing BT cotton and bollworms with K-State Extension agronomist Logan Simon and K-State Extension entomologist Anthony Zukoff. Logan, Anthony, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us on.
Logan, as we're talking about BT cotton, what are some common traits for Kansas?
In cotton, we have that same, we have those BT traits that we are used to also having in Kansas, usually we're talking about BT corn. In cotton, our two primary traits that our guys might be growing would be White Strike 3, which is the BT trait that we have in our phytogen varieties. And then for anybody that might be growing some Delta pine cotton, that is going to be your Bollguard 3. In both cases, we're talking about the latest 3-protein BT packages. And so all of our cotton that is going to be out there is going to have that complete package.
What might growers need to be watching for even if they planted these?
Some important things that I would want people to keep in mind when it comes to BT cotton and managing for specifically bollworms. Keep in mind that we've got BT out there in our corn, we've got BT in our cotton, and so in that way, that trait is out there and very much present across the landscape. What that means is we've got that potential for some selection pressure, and we'll talk a little bit more about, why that matters in managing this pest. The other thing I really want to stress to people is the fact that cotton bollworms are not just the bollworm. They are corn earworm, sorghum headworm, soybean podworm. It's the same pest. And so what all of that means here is that we've got this pest present and feeding in a number of different crops where we potentially have that pressure on them. BT is a built-in trait. We've got that in that cotton crop that conveys resistance to these lepidopteran pests. But really, monitoring those BT crops is absolutely essential. Since the advent of BT, we've seen a lot of producers, not just our cotton growers, but our corn growers, adopt kind of, plant it and leave it sort of mentality. Hey, I'm BT, I'm good. But in reality, we've got, a lot of potential selection pressure for resistance out there. And the only way we know if we've got resistance is if we're scouting. And so even if you've got a strong BT, and almost everyone should have a strong BT package, we've got to be out there scouting this time of year, looking for those potential bollworms that might be out there. We're going to stay on top of managing for this pest and preventing resistance from developing in our populations up here in Kansas. Although we do not know what our status is here, we won't know without adequate monitoring. We do know that there is resistance in some other states in the Cotton Belt, and so it's really important that our producers be mindful of that.
And Anthony, for the bollworm, what would growers be scouting for?
So when you're scouting for bollworm, one of the first things you might notice when you're walking through your field is the adult moths. So the adult moths are this cream yellowish kind of color, maybe quarter-inch head to tail, so to speak. But when you walk into that field, even during the daytime, you're going to flush those adult moths, and you'll see these cream-colored yellowish moths flitting about. And when they land on a surface, they're going to be a triangle shape. So when you walk into your field, And there's bollworm pressure, corn earworm, like Logan mentioned, they're a pest of multiple crops. But what you'll see bollworm moths landing on surfaces, and then you'll want to start looking a little closer. So when you're scouting, threshold wise, you're going to be looking for eggs or caterpillars. So the eggs are laid very so opposed to some other pest moth species, bollworms are going to lay their eggs singly. They'll lay single eggs on new leaf buds. They'll lay eggs on even old leaves or flower buds or even bolls. And so for scouting for this pest can be quite tedious, but it's very important. So you're looking for individual eggs on the plant, and they're easy to identify once you know what they look like. They're just kind of these cylindrical little cream-colored eggs that are going to be on the leaf surfaces. So you'll be scouting for those, or you'll be scouting for caterpillars. And the caterpillars, when they first hatch, are extremely tiny, hard to detect. But as they grow bigger, one of the easier characteristics I like to point out to people is they have a series of black spots on their body, and those spots all have very bristly hairs. So they're kind of spiny, not really, but it's important to know that their color varies quite a bit. They could be white, cream, green, dark colored, but those series of spots will be a good indicator. So when you're scouting non-BT cotton, you're going to want to be looking for eggs or caterpillars. And so if you're looking for eggs, about 10% of the plants that you're looking at for eggs, if they have eggs, that'll be threshold. If you're looking for caterpillars, 5 to 6% of the plants, if there's young caterpillars on those plants, especially if you're starting to see feeding damage, boll damage, you're going to want to maybe make a treatment decision. When you're scouting BT, like Logan mentioned, we need to be scouting those BT acres. We're not guaranteed to have issues. You're going to want to be looking for caterpillars basically. And so when you're looking for caterpillars, it's going to be about 10% of those plants have young caterpillars present. Or if you're scouting flowers, when you're dealing with BT acres, you look at the flowers. If you have caterpillars in those flowers, 5-6% of those flowers you're looking at have caterpillars, and you might want to make a treatment decision there.
As we've noted, we don't have, that we know of, any resistance of bollworms against BT cotton. But what does that feeding process look like if they do eat that cotton? Is it instantaneous or it takes a while for them to die off?
It'll take a few days for those caterpillars to die. So that highlights the importance of getting out there a couple times a week at least during flowering. So once that field starts flowering until, 2 months in, you're going to want to be out there making sure you want to get an idea of what's going on caterpillar-wise, egg-wise, for this pest. Because again, as Logan mentioned, there's a bunch of different hosts. This pest, bollworm, corn earworm, whatever you want to call it, it is very present in our landscape in Kansas. It's using a lot of different hosts, and a crop can get infested really late in the season. But if it gets infested late in the season, it might not be as important if it was earlier in the season. And Logan might have better, a comment about that.
Yeah, so as we think about later in the season, the indicator that we would be looking for would be what we in the cotton world would call cutout, which is 4 to 5 nodes above white flower. At that point, we're developing the very last of our bolls that could be contributing to yield, and in that way, they tend to produce they contribute the least to that final yield. So as our cotton producers will know, it is those lower initial first position bolls that we really want to protect as they contribute the most to yield. So once we get up there toward cutouts, that really is the time for many things, including control of potential control of bollworms. We start to let off.
When might someone want to use chemical control?
I would say if you hit the thresholds that were mentioned previously, that's when you would probably want to use chemical control. And it's important to understand there are a lot of products to treat for this pest. There's plenty of them. You're not going to be, short of any kind of options, but a lot of the options are very generalist. They'll kill everything. And so when you're making decisions to treat for this pest in cotton, you really want to make sure you are at threshold and it's warranted, because most of the things you're going to be able to select are going to kill all your beneficial insects that are going to be helping to control secondary pests in cotton, like aphids and spider mites, which can blow up, especially if you kill off all the beneficials. So if you hit the threshold and treatment's warranted, you have a lot of options. but just be aware that you'll be damaging pretty much everything in the field as far as the beneficials go.
As we're talking about cotton this time of year and looking forward, is there any other pests that people need to be watching for potentially?
Yeah, another insect that can sometimes blow up this time of year in Kansas cotton is our stink bugs. There are several different kinds of stink bugs that can feed on cotton. They're a piercing, sucking insect, think like an aphid would be. And basically, what we're worried about here is that they are going to be feeding on those developing bolls, potentially decreasing yield and fiber quality. But also, what they can sometimes do is transmit pathogens, and which can lead to boll rot. So we really want to be, as we're out there thinking about scouting for bollworms, also keep an eye out for those stink bugs, as we know that they can be a problem. Our action thresholds on these are going to be 10 to 15% boll injury, where we've got that sign of that piercing, sucking insect, right there in that third to fifth week of bloom. As we get later, our threshold gets much higher. As we get into that sixth week, that seventh week of bloom, much closer to cutout in the end of the season, our thresholds for stink bugs get very high as we are rapidly ending that season and not as worried about it. But I just encourage our cotton growers in Kansas to really keep an eye out for stink bugs, as we know that they are sometimes a significant pest for us here in Kansas.
Logan, Anthony, I appreciate both taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelby.
That was K-State Extension agronomist Logan Simon and K-State Extension entomologist Anthony Zukoff. I will link an agronomy update article on this topic in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing the Farm to Plate program with Farm to Plate Project Director Barb Depew. Barb, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, glad to be here.
Barb, what is the Farm to Plate program?
Well, it is actually an initiative, and it is one that what we want to do is to actually increase the use of local foods in our child nutrition programs across the state of Kansas. Our programs through Child Nutrition with the Department of Education include the breakfast program, lunch program, summer meal programs. We have after-school programs and the fresh fruit and vegetable program. So there are many opportunities to add local products into those.
How do you go about adding in local products?
It works in several ways, and what we want to do is help our program operators find local. Local might be right there on their school property, in their backyard. They could have ag programs that have growing programs that they are getting either produce or sometimes even animals that they are growing and raising on the school property. With our child nutrition programs with childcare, they have backyard gardens. They can actually have backyard chickens, a variety of things. This is a great time of year, too, for farmers markets, working with even the community producers, anybody that they have in their community. They could have a school board member. They could have a parent. Any of those can be a supplier of local product in our programs.
How long have you been doing this?
Started with a grant with the 2015 as a training grant. We did some regional trainings, and we did have the initiative then to go ahead and to work across the state. And I have been in the Topeka office then to incorporate it into all of our programs then since that time.
With this large variety, what value have you seen it bring?
Well, it's very exciting, actually, to see the kids. Some of them are growing their own, that maybe those gardens that I spoke of, they could actually be raising their own fruits and vegetables that could be incorporated into their meals. They could actually, through ag programs, then be raising the animals then that they could be taking into the locker to be used as a processed item into the meal programs. All of these are ways that the kids are learning where their food comes from. And you'd be surprised, this works for, again, our rural and our urban schools, but many of those kids don't realize where some of their food comes from.
How could a producer get involved in this?
Well, we hope that our schools, our child cares, all of those can actually find a producer then through many ways. We encourage them through the Shop Kansas Farms program, through our From the Land of Kansas program, also a variety of directories, local food directories. In many of our grants that we have training workshops, and those workshops have been to actually work together with producers to have locations that we would have meetups, then that we would have both the producer and the operators in our programs that would actually work together and talk about how they could incorporate local products. So we want to know what the producer has, but we also need the producer to know what might fit well into the programs, whether it be their crops or whether it be their animals, however, any of those can work.
Can you share with us a few examples of what has worked in the past for these different varieties of schools and childcare and all those different opportunities?
Yes, I think the best one that I have for you, Shelby, is actually, it's our Local Foods for Schools program. This was a program that happened in 23, and it was between USDA and AMS. And this was an opportunity to have funding that we would be able to use to actually produce local products then from a producer. We chose meats in Kansas. Then we offered a stipend to any of our program operators. This was with schools that wanted to go ahead and buy from a producer. They had to be able to identify a producer that they would get their meat products from. And we had $1.7 million that was actually spent then from the program operators. And this was incorporated into 216 of our school nutrition programs that received the funding. And there were 243 producers that were actually contacted and that worked with them then to get the meats. It could be beef, it could be pork. We had some chicken also that was actually purchased and used in our meal programs.
For someone on that child care or school side of things, how could they go about getting involved?
We're there at our department then to be able to help if they have questions about, we do have a producer directory that we keep internally. And then if they're contacting us and they would like to know who is available either, and local can mean several things. It could mean something that they're getting from the community. It could be regionally, or it could be across the state. And we call it farm to plate because we want to cover the plate with local products. That doesn't just mean fruits and vegetables or meats. It can also mean the grains, the dairy, all of those items. So depending on how they are wanting to incorporate local, we will work with them to find those resources for them if we can. And we have had some funding through USDA with our farm to school grants. And we've used those for both our schools and child cares to provide then some funding for them to be able to, whether it be to get equipment that they need, maybe to do more from scratch baking, whether it be to purchase those backyard, whether it be a garden or even that backyard chicken coop that I mentioned, some equipment that they might need, tools for the gardens. We've had some varieties. They've had equipment maybe to extend the season. So if they would have garden equipment, they would be able to go ahead and maybe freeze dry it, or they could dehydrate it so that they could use it then throughout the school year. And so that we have helped then to go ahead with the funding that we provide. And typically we have anywhere from 10 to 15 program operators that are able to get up to $10,000 then with their description of their products and their projects that they're having to work with.
Could a producer also take the initiative to get involved in the farm to plate?
That's one of the things that we've actually done with our more recent grant projects is that we've included a team. So the producer is one of those team members that they would have to go ahead and work with. And the producer then could be working together with the school to do that. And that's been very successful to have a group working together because it's not just the school nutrition area, but a variety of areas that they would want to go ahead and work in not just the kitchens, but also maybe in some of the other parts of the school. Nutrition education and ag education are also very important with our programs as we work together.
What makes you excited about all of this work?
I get a lot of pictures from some of the projects that are out there, and I really enjoy seeing the pictures of the kids engaged in whether it be the backyard projects or just eating healthy products. And so that I just really think our pictures, we have a hashtag Fueling KS Kids that we use in our social media. And a lot of our schools and child cares do a wonderful job with that to share out through social media then some of the pictures of the things that they are doing out there.
If people want to find out more information about this, how can they do that?
We have information on our website, so that with our child nutrition area of the Kansas Department of Education, www.cnw.ksde.gov. And there is a farm to plate link that is there that they can go ahead and look at. And basically, it's really the easy button is just making those connections so that they will know that there's a producer that has a product and our schools that are interested in that product. We would hope, a dream would be that there'd even be producers out there that would be raising a field of lettuce just for our schools or whatever product that they have, that they would actually be, because it's a steady market for our schools would have a steady market for the producer that they could actually go ahead and purchase on a regular basis, and it would just help the economy just in general locally then.
Barb, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Well, thank you. And I'm always happy to talk with. They can call our office in Topeka. Happy to visit with anybody that has questions. October is actually Farm to School Month. And we do have a separate celebration that we do in that month of everything local. We have a Harvest of the Month program that we do. And so we promote different products. August has been melons. Coming up in September, it's tomatoes. And then in October, it's apples. And so with October Farm to School Month, we have what we call a crunch off. And with that crunch off, then we want to crunch on everything local, anything that all of our programs, it doesn't have to be just fruits and vegetables. It can even be meat sticks that they can crunch on. So anyway, just creating a special event that they would celebrate agriculture in Kansas.
That was Farm to Plate Project Director Barb Depew. I will place the link that she mentioned in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. We end today's program with this week's milk lines. HPAI, or bird flu in cow herds across the United States, is beginning to show signs of being on the downward side. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk says that a national milk testing strategy implemented last year by APHIS rates Kansas as a Stage 4 unaffected state. He says that means Kansas doesn't have any herds currently testing positive for HPAI. And according to Mike, the goal is for all states to reach Stage 5, which means that HPAI has been eliminated.
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy producers concerning HPAI, or bird flu, in our dairy herds across the United States. As we look at the current status of bird flu across the United States, here in the state of Kansas, we've actually been relatively untouched, not completely. We did have 4 herds that officially tested positive. The last herd actually tested positive in April of 2024. So it's been well over a year since we've had a new positive herd within the state. And the 4 herds that did test positive initially have all cleared from bird flu. Do we still have some ongoing issues within the dairy industry? We do. And as a result of that, APHIS has established a national milk testing strategy. That strategy was actually established last fall in 2024. And then Kansas was one of the first states to implement a plan that basically involves testing of milk at dairy processing plants across the state. So there are samples being pulled on a monthly basis at our dairy processing plants, and these are tested for the presence of HPAI. Fortunately, all of the samples that have been taken so far here in Kansas in that program have been negative. So as a result of that, within the program, this program is really designed by APHIS to eventually clear the United States of positive herds of HPAI. And it seems to be working fairly well. The state of Kansas now has a stage 4 status, or unaffected, and we will continue to do the monthly monitoring that is going on, and that's being accomplished through our Kansas Department of Agriculture through the Animal Health Division, with help from our dairy inspectors who are actually pulling the samples as they visit various dairy processing plants on their regular inspection routes. So it's been a very good program for the state in terms of determining that we do not have new infected herds within the state. So where does this all eventually end up? As soon as all of the states reach the stage 4 category, or unaffected, which means that they have to have at least 4 cycles of silo tests that are negative before they can achieve that status, we will begin stage 5, which is when we begin to test to make sure that the disease has been eliminated. Finally, once we've determined that the disease has been eliminated in the United States, we will achieve stage 5 status as a nation. So that's something that will happen within all states that have demonstrated that they have not been affected by HPAI for a period of time. I do not expect that we'll see this status until probably sometime in 2026, could be 2027, just kind of depends on what happens as we see migratory birds start to move north again this fall, and then again as they move again in the spring. And since we're doing the monitoring of the silos at processing plants across the United States, it's likely that we would detect any new herds through that system, maybe even more so than if we were just depending on symptoms seen on the farms. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension, letting our dairy industry know that HPAI is on the downward side at this time. And just a reminder to the consumers that with pasteurization does deactivate any issue that might be found with HPAI in finished products. So products that you are purchasing at the store are safe and wholesome for consumption.
Thanks, Mike. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.